I've replayed that night in my head 1,000 times. The flickering neon beer sign buzzing in the window. The smell of stale draft beer and heavy frying oil hanging in the air. The squeak of the cheap vinyl booth beneath me. But most of all, I remember the exact moment the boy I had been in love with since I was a teenager looked at me not with affection, but with pure, unadulterated disgust. And the craziest part of it all, the thing that destroyed a decade of friendship and the most important relationship of my life wasn't infidelity. It wasn't a massive betrayal. It was a plate of rubbery, deep-fried squid. If you had told me a year ago that my relationship would end over a restaurant order, I would have laughed in your face. But looking back now, I realized the signs were always there, simmering quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to boil over. To really understand how devastating this was, you have to understand our history. We weren't just two people who swiped right on a dating app. We had known each other since middle school. We were 25 now, which means we had over a decade of shared history. We were those two kids who were always circling each other, always flirting, always trapped in that ambiguous gray area of more than friends but not quite dating. The timing was never right. When I was single, he was taken. When he was single, I was caught up in something else. But a few months ago, the stars finally aligned. We were both single. We were both living in the same city, and that undeniable spark between us finally ignited into something real. We officially started dating. It had only been 3 months, but because of our long history, it felt like we had been together for years. I was over the moon. He was, without a doubt, the sweetest, most patient guy I had ever known. I also knew that he carried some heavy baggage. He had been seriously hurt in his past relationships, and because of that, I wanted to be his safe haven. I wanted to be the easy, comfortable, loving partner he deserved. I genuinely believed I was. But we had one glaring difference in our personalities. I am an adventurer, especially when it comes to food. For me, going out to eat isn't just about fueling your body. It's an experience. It's a chance to taste the world, to try something exotic, to step outside the mundane routine of daily life. I love scanning a menu for the weirdest, most unique dish and rolling the dice. He, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He actually liked trying new flavors if someone else made them, but the actual process of reading a menu, weighing the options, and making a decision gave him massive anxiety. He told me once that the sheer volume of choices at a restaurant stressed him out so much that it ruined the meal for him. So he found a workaround. He eliminated the choice altogether. Every single time we went out, no matter where we were, he ordered the exact same thing. A plain cheeseburger. Just meat, cheese, and the bun. He always asked for ketchup strictly on the side, and he absolutely had to have honey mustard to dip his fries in. It didn't matter if we were at a trendy bistro, a local diner, or a seafood place. If they had a burger, that's what he got. At first, I thought it was just a quirky, endearing character trait, but soon it became the foundation of a very specific dynamic between us. Here was the problem. My adventurous spirit rarely matched the reality of the food I was ordering. I would see something incredible on a menu, like a spicy duck confit or an exotic saffron risotto, and I'd build it up in my head. I'd order it, absolutely certain I was gonna love it. But 9 times out of 10, the plate would arrive, I'd take 2 bites, and I would realize that it was too spicy, too weird, or just not what I wanted. I'd look across the table at his perfectly safe, warm, comforting cheeseburger, and suddenly, that was the only thing in the world I wanted to eat. So, I started asking to switch. The first time it happened, we were at a modern fusion restaurant. I had ordered some kind of complicated glazed pork belly, and I hated it immediately. I looked over at him and said, "Hey, this is actually kind of terrible. Would you mind trading with me?" He didn't even blink. He just smiled, slid his burger across the table, and pulled my plate toward him. He ate the pork belly, told me it was actually really delicious, and that was that. I got my comfort food, he got to try something new without the stress of ordering it, and nothing went in the trash. In my mind, I had just discovered the ultimate life hack. I convinced myself that this was a win-win situation. I was saving food from being wasted, which I care deeply about, and I was gently nudging him out of his culinary comfort zone. I honestly thought I was doing him a favor. I thought I was expanding his horizons. So it became our routine. We would go out, I would order the wildest thing on the menu, I wouldn't like it, and I'd ask him to trade. He always said yes. He never sighed. He never rolled his eyes. He never gave me a single indication that this was slowly driving him insane. He would just smile, hand over his meal, and eat whatever experiment I had placed in front of him. I was completely, hopelessly blind to the resentment that was building up inside him, bite by bite, dinner by dinner. That brings us to last night. We had both worked incredibly long, grueling shifts. By the time we finally managed to meet up, it was late, we were both exhausted, and we just wanted to decompress. We met at a local sports bar downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, just a loud, dimly lit dive with sticky tables and a dozen televisions playing different games. We slid into a booth, barely speaking because we were so drained. The waitress came over and I noticed they had a special on the chalkboard. Crispy fried calamari with a spicy aioli. In my exhausted state, it sounded like the greatest thing in the world. Sophisticated but fried. Perfect. I ordered it without a second thought. He, of course, ordered his plain cheeseburger, ketchup on the side, honey mustard for the fries. We sat in comfortable silence, sipping our drinks, waiting for the food. I was so hungry my stomach was physically aching. When the waitress finally returned and set the plates down, my mouth was watering. But the moment I looked at my plate, my heart sank. This wasn't the delicate, lightly breaded calamari you get at a nice Italian place. This was sports bar calamari. It was heavily battered, dripping with dark grease, and looked incredibly chewy. I picked up my fork, dipped a piece into the neon orange sauce, and took a bite. It was like chewing on a deep-fried rubber band. It was heavy, oily, and completely unappetizing. I swallowed it down, took a sip of water, and immediately looked across the table. There sat his cheeseburger. It looked perfect. The cheese was melted just right, the bun was toasted, and the fries were golden and crisp. It was exactly what I actually wanted. I didn't even hesitate. I leaned forward forward, giving him my best, tired, sweet smile. "Hey," I said softly. "I'm really not feeling this calamari. It's kind of gross. Do you want to switch?" I reached my hand out, fully expecting him to grab his plate and slide it toward me, just like he had done a dozen times before. Instead, he stopped eating. He put his burger down on the plate. He looked me dead in the eye, and his voice was completely flat. "No." I froze. My hand was still hovering over the middle of the table. I blinked, genuinely confused. I thought maybe I hadn't heard him right over the noise of the bar. "What?" I asked. "No," he repeated, his voice a little harder this time. "I don't want to switch." A sudden wave of defensive annoyance washed over me. I was tired, I was hungry, and this was our routine. Why was he suddenly breaking the rules? Why not? I pushed, my tone sharpening. "I can't eat this. It's terrible. And you know I absolutely hate letting food go to waste. Come on, just trade with me." He stared at me. The silence between us seemed to stretch out for an eternity, cutting through the ambient noise of the sports bar. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet, practically vibrating with a sudden, intense anger I had never seen from him before. "Then you shouldn't have fucking ordered it." I physically recoiled. It felt like he had reached across the table and slapped me. The air was completely sucked out of my lungs. "Excuse me?" I whispered, and then the dam broke. Years of his unspoken frustration, masked by his sweet demeanor, suddenly exploded all over that sticky bar table. "I am so sick of this," he practically yelled. Leaning in so fiercely, I pressed my back against the vinyl booth. "You treat me like a garbage disposal. You go out, you order whatever random crap you want, and when you realize you don't like it, you just dump it on me. I'm a grown man. I order a plain cheeseburger because that is what I want to eat. I don't want to eat your cold, rubbery squid. I don't want to eat your spicy pork. I want the food that I ordered." I sat there paralyzed. My eyes were wide, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as a few people at the tables next to us turned to look. "You are acting so incredibly immature," he continued, his face flushed with anger. "You make these terrible choices and then you refuse to face the consequences. You just pin your crap on me so you don't have to feel bad about wasting food. Stop making your bad decisions my problem." I was hyperventilating now. My chest felt tight. I felt attacked, humiliated, and utterly blindsided. I was so caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of his words that my brain scrambled to find a defense mechanism. "Why are you talking to me like this?" I stammered, my voice shaking. You sound like you've been practicing this in the mirror. That sounded like a rehearsed speech." He let out a harsh, bitter laugh that sent a chill down my spine. "Yeah, maybe it was rehearsed. Maybe I've been running this through my head for weeks, because every single time we go anywhere, you absolutely insist on stealing my food. I'm tired of it." The word insist echoed in my head. I didn't insist. I asked. I always asked. I thought it was a mutual agreement. The injustice of it all, combined with the exhaustion of the day, overwhelmed me. Tears welled up in my eyes and instantly spilled over my cheeks. I pressed my hands to my face, letting out a quiet sob. He didn't soften. He didn't reach out to comfort me. The sweet, patient boy I had known since middle school was entirely gone. He looked at my tears and his expression turned completely cold. "Don't," he snapped. "Do not start that bullshit crying with me right now. I'm not doing this." He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. He threw a $20 bill onto the table. "Here," he said, looking down at me with absolute detachment. "Have both meals. Eat whatever you want." He turned around and walked out of the store, leaving me sitting alone in the booth, sobbing quietly over a plate of untouched calamari and a half-eaten plain cheeseburger. I didn't go after him. I was too stunned, too embarrassed, and too hurt. I eventually paid the tab, walked out into the cool night air, and drove myself home in complete silence. When I got to my apartment, the adrenaline completely left my body, leaving me hollow. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at my phone. It was 11 p.m. I told myself he just needed to cool off. He was stressed from work. He had blown up over a minor annoyance, and once he got home and calmed down, he would realize how disproportionate his reaction was. He would text me, he would call, he would apologize for swearing at me and leaving me alone in a bar. Midnight came and went. No text. 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I paced my living room floor, my mind racing. I went over the argument 100 times. Was I really that bad? I only ever asked to switch. I never forced him. He could have just said no the very first time and I would have stopped. Why did he pretend to be okay with it for so long, only to humiliate me in public? It wasn't fair. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. The silence in my apartment was deafening. By 5:30 in the morning, the sky outside my window was starting to turn a bruised, pale gray. I hadn't slept a wink. My anxiety was entirely suffocating me. I needed a reality check. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. I picked up my phone and dialed my older sister. It rang 5 times before she finally picked up, her voice thick and gravelly with sleep. "Hello?" she mumbled. "Is someone hurt? What time is it?" "It's me," I choked out, the tears starting all over again. "I'm so sorry to wake you up, but I need to talk. We got into a huge fight. I spent the next 10 minutes pouring my heart out. I told her everything. I told her about the calamari, the cheeseburger, the yelling, the garbage disposal comment, and how he just walked out and abandoned me. I waited for her to validate me. I waited for her to tell me how awful he was being. Instead, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Are you serious right now?" my sister finally asked. The sleepiness was gone from her voice, replaced by cold irritation. "Yes," I sniffled. "He hasn't called me. I've been up all night." My sister sighed, a deep, frustrated sound. "Look, you are an absolute asshole for waking me up at 5:30 in the morning to complain about a restaurant bill, but since you woke me up, I'm gonna tell you the truth." I braced myself. "He's right," she said bluntly. "You are acting like a child. You go out, you pick out food you aren't even sure you're going to like, and then you expect him to eat your mistakes. You say you're just asking, but to a guy who loves you and wants to make you happy, asking feels exactly like insisting. You're putting pressure on him to sacrifice his own comfort so you don't have to feel guilty about wasting food. That is really, really crappy of you." "But he never said anything," I argued weakly. "He always acted like he liked it, because he's a nice guy who was trying to tolerate your bad habits," she snapped. "Order food you actually want to eat like a grown adult. Now let me go back to sleep." She hung hung up. The click of the line disconnecting echoed in my quiet living room. I sat there holding the phone, feeling the absolute weight of her words crush me. It was like a mirror had been held up to my face, and for the first time I saw how incredibly selfish I had been. I wasn't expanding his horizons. I wasn't being cute. I was routinely prioritizing my own passing cravings over his basic comfort, and I'd been doing it for months. Suddenly, I didn't want an apology from him. I wanted to apologize to him. I wanted to beg for his forgiveness. I wanted to tell him I would never ask for a single fry off his plate ever again. I waited until 9 o'clock the next morning. I stared at his contact name on my screen, my thumb hovering over the call button, trying to find the perfect words to make this right. Before I could press it, my screen lit up. It was him, calling me. My heart leaped into my throat. I swiped to answer and pulled the phone to my ear, breathless. "Hey," I said quickly. "Listen, I am so sorry about last night. My sister talked to me and..." "Stop." His voice cut through the line. It wasn't angry anymore. It was worse. It was completely hollow. It was the voice of a man who had already moved on. "Don't," he said quietly. "Just listen to me. I've been awake all night thinking about this. Please, let me just explain." "I don't want an explanation," he interrupted, his tone firm. "I'm exhausted. Not just from last night. I'm exhausted by the entire dynamic. I realized something sitting in my car last night. We've only been officially dating for 3 months. I know," I pleaded, "but we've known each other forever. We can fix this. If I am this unhappy and this frustrated in the first 3 months of a relationship, the so-called honeymoon phase," he paused, and I could hear him take a deep, shaky breath, "then this relationship isn't for me. We need to take a break. A permanent one." "Wait, no, please take care of yourself," he said softly, and then he hung up. Just like that, it was over. 10 years of friendship, 3 months of hoping it was forever. All of it gone, completely erased in less than 24 hours. I spent the next few days in a fog of absolute misery, oscillating between feeling incredibly foolish and utterly heartbroken. I realized that the internet, my sister, and the boy I loved were all completely right. I was the villain in my own story. I had treated someone I deeply cared about like an afterthought, under the guise of being adventurous. I thought I was trying to spice up our lives, but in reality, I was just making him swallow my mistakes. So here I am, a 25-year-old girl sitting alone in a quiet apartment, completely single and entirely to blame. I lost the sweetest guy I've ever known. And the hardest pill to swallow isn't the heartbreak. It's knowing that when he finally decided to leave, it wasn't a tragedy to him. It was a relief. And honestly, next time I go out to eat, I think I'll just order a plain cheeseburger.